Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our first virtual EDPA Southern California educational event. My name's Steve Riches, and I recognize a lot of the names on the list here today. I'm going to be moderating our session today with Cathy Breden from CEIR. After Cathy's finished her presentation, she's going to be available for questions. What we'd like to do is have you use the raised hand function on the participants tab at the bottom of your screen. So once she finishes speaking, and then what I'll do is I'll pick the questions, I'll pick your names, and then you can read your questions out to Cathy. And then if we have time, we're going to open up for a general discussion. But before we get started, I would like to introduce you to our new EDPA Southern California President, Antonia Nuzzolo. Are you there, Antonia?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining today's meeting. We've been really looking forward to Cathy speaking about the state of our industry, and it will be interesting to see how much her presentation's content has changed compared to our last meeting that she spoke at back only in March. At our March meeting, I was then the vice president of the SoCal EDPA board, and a few weeks ago was chosen for the president position. To introduce myself to those who don't know me, my name is Antonia Nuzzolo, and I'm an account executive with the I&D company Eagle Management Group. In 2018, I graduated college in New Jersey, where I also grew up, and moved for Eagle in July to the West Coast. At this time, I was introduced to the SoCal EDPA group by Vince Battaglia, and have grown my perspective, network, and career due to joining the group. I'm very excited to have been entrusted with the opportunity to serve you in my new position on the board, and I'm happy to be on a great team with Steve Riches, Boy Smith, Vince Battaglia, Doug Young, and Chris Clark. This is a novel and difficult time for our industry, and our board hopes that our EDPA group can provide you with a space to share and help each other. You can be a judge of whether today's session offers you that value, and if it does, we'll hope you consider joining us for more events. We are in part able to host these events because of our year's platinum sponsors, including Agam, Optima Graphics, Hitlights, Image Options, and Muse Presentation Technologies, as well as our year's gold sponsor, Aluvision. Today's speaker is the COO and VP of IAEE, as well as the Managing Director for the CEIR, a group that highlights the importance of exhibitions in the business world. Cathy Breden kindly agreed to join us today to discuss some of the trade show industry's most pressing topics, from what the industry is doing to prepare for the trade shows scheduled for upcoming months, the economic impacts of the pandemic, insights into today's virtual and live connections, and more. With that, I would like to now invite Cathy Breden to take the stage and begin her presentation.
Hi, Antonio, and thank you, Steve, and Antonio, and Vince, and thanks to all of you who are here with us today. It seems just a short time ago that I was there with you in California giving you a presentation, and my goodness, how much has changed in what, just a short 6 weeks. It is a very interesting, critical time for the trade show industry, as I'm sure all of you are experiencing, as is all of the show organizers as well. I'm sure you have heard of, just massive layoffs, and I'm sure that unfortunately you probably have gone through that as well. And we're all focused on how do we continue our business and how do we get through this and over to the other side. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. So Antonia, can you see that? Everybody see that okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
I want to just do the presentation mode at the bottom right.
Oh, that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Try one more time. The button right next to that minimize, or the minus button.
Here, let me do it this way. It's probably. I just always press that little button right down there and it works.
Or you could try top left. There's, you see at the very top next to off to the right.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Is that better?
Does not want to work with us.
Yeah, I don't know why.
We can see it well if you want to just work.
Okay, all right, then we'll just go from here rather than having to play around with it. But thank you again for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I wish I could be there with you face to face, and but unfortunately that isn't going to happen today. Today I'm going to talk about where we were, 6 weeks ago and where we are now. Talk a little bit about, what organizers are doing to adapt, offering virtual versus live events. Also providing an economic impact statement as well as the projections. Also the recovery and what the industry is doing to prepare for trade shows being held again. And so I'll get into that as well. You may also remember that I showed this slide when I was with you in March or the end of February, that this was a photo that I took when I was in Nanning, China in January. I thought that the black swans were very pretty. I'd never seen one. I'm hoping that that wasn't an omen for what was to come. Also, just to provide a little perspective, down there in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see that on February 28th, when I was there were just 89,000 infections.
Cathy, I don't think that it's moving.
Oh my gosh.
You want to press stop share screen and then try one more time? Okay. I'm going to try to display it one more time because now we're seeing it move.
It says screen sharing. It says I am screen sharing. Can you see that?
No. At least the slide though. We'll just keep it like this.
So I'm on this slide. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay, so all right, so there were 89,000, just over 89,000 cases at the end of February, 3,000 deaths, and today just looked before our session, and there are 1.4 million, with more deaths now, almost more deaths now than what it was at the end of February. So, I never ever would have thought that this would have been the case. This is just a slide, and we'll make sure that you get these slides after the presentation, just showing, 116,000 as of April 13th, and, where we were with other epidemics all those many years ago and even more recently. So just really, helps, I think, to provide some perspective as to where we are. I'm a glass half full kind of person. I'm also, I think, a very pragmatic and realistic person. And, I do think that the exhibition industry is going to come back. This is a survey that was conducted by APCO, a worldwide research firm, in April, that said 8 in 10 people who are working from home that say that they,
yeah, aren't moving. Do you want to totally press stop share and then bring it back? Sorry to interrupt you.
Maybe I should just email this very quickly. You put it up on your screen.
Yeah, you want to email it to me and I'll.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sorry everyone for the technical difficulties.
I apologize. We were just talking earlier before the call about another program that had technical challenges, and look at us.
We even had a practice round.
Hey, baby.
Hey.
All right, honey. Hey, the daddy's not coming over now.
Hey, Doug, we can hear you if you want to mute yourself.
Sorry, baby. There.
Okay, I just got it. Let me pull it up. Okay. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay, so the 8 and 10 who said that they miss in-person events, also 8 and 10 who said they are working from home, that they are just as likely or more likely to attend an in-person event once the threat is over. So, you know, that is a good sign. I've also been watching a lot of consumer sentiment just to keep track, and it's you know, these numbers have gone down a little bit, I think, as the seriousness of the pandemic has grown, but at the same time, you see all these consumer sentiment surveys that are, you know, also verifying that people are eager to travel again and attend in-person events. So I think that's a good sign. Next slide. In April, Seer conducted a survey of its organizer members. At this time, it was about 490 trade shows that we were tracking. Now it's well over 600. But the interesting thing is that the percentages have held. Canceled, meaning that it's not going to be held this year, 58%, and 42% said it's postponed. So, you know, there has been a tremendous impact. Saw, you know, just yesterday that ASAE its show. I think it's going to be very interesting to watch the IMTS show in Chicago in early September, especially with what the governor, you know, the mayor have said about carving trade shows or putting trade shows into the classification as mass gatherings. So I think that's going to be a very interesting one to watch. The organizer said that it's had an extreme impact on their operations as well as their budgets, and you know, they're all really struggling now to figure out, okay, how do they maintain, how do they retain some of this revenue that they had booked for this show. So next slide. When we asked them what their plans are once this crisis ends, so every one of them, not every one of them, but 71% said that they will be looking at their model, and they will have contingency plans to be able to pivot, to be able to offer programming virtually. 46% said that. And then also some of them said adding a virtual component to their exhibition, and how do they adopt a hybrid model. You know, the contingency also looking at shifting other face-to-face that might be held, might not be in the same format, might be a smaller event, might be a regional event. Also co-locating with another exhibition. We have heard that this is the case with Access that has some events at the end of August, that they are co-locating with other events. And then a very, very small 3% minority said that they're abandoning face-to-face model altogether and going to a virtual only model. So that's a little bit of what the organizers are thinking right now. We're going to be doing this survey again in early June. We wanted to give it just a little bit of time, let things settle down, because when this was done in April, I think everybody was a little bit shell-shocked and needed to really, you know, think through and in terms of what it is that they would be doing at least through the end of this year. Next, yeah, there you go. This is a slide that I was able to obtain from Freeman. They had conducted a survey of brand marketers in terms of what will increase their confidence in participating in live events. And this was live events across the board, not just trade shows, which I think is, you know, more applicable to this audience. But 90% of those who did respond to this survey do participate in trade shows. So, you know, certainly this is in line with other surveys that I have seen, that the availability of a vaccine will, you know, eliminate any concern about attending. Also a treatment drug to lessen the severity of the symptoms and hopefully keep people off of ventilators. And then you can see the rest of it as well. One of the other things that we are seeing, and I'll talk about in just a moment, but a lot of things that we're hearing is many of the companies have travel bans in place. I think 90% of them have travel bans in place that responded to this survey, and they have no idea when that travel ban will be lifted. So a lot of it is by the companies themselves. Also, you know, just having a sense of feeling safe in a venue is another consideration, and then just feeling safe and being able to travel again. Next slide. The good thing, and I think that one of the things that, you know, face-to-face is always going to be known for is engagement. It's engagement through the networking opportunities. It's the engagement through meeting in the booths, you know, the product demonstrations. It's those serendipitous moments when people meet one another face to face and develop relationships and may find a new buyer that they might not have been on their radar. So the brand marketers are expressing this concern that engaging audiences during an online event is very difficult. And also driving the audience to online events. I think, you know, people pop in and online events. I was telling Antonia and Steve that before this, I participated in a 2.5-day virtual event, and more, it was put on by a virtual event company. So I think that it is something that is you know, going to be a tremendous issue. There's not enough time. Lots of people are talking, you know, and putting notes in the chats and things like that throughout the session, and there's just no way that those questions can all be answered based on what I experienced. And then just the other elements in there, just, you know, adapting the content to a digital format, because it's a whole different skill set than what it is in participating in a live event or presenting at a live event. The skill set's very, very different. And so they'll have to train their staff to have that type of experience that is going to engage the audience. And then the most important face-to-face program post-COVID, some of them, this differs from some of the research that Seer has done, but Seer's research is a little bit older, that, you know, trade shows were number one. On this survey, it looks like that we're seeing that the branded conference, the user conference, partner conference, and training will be more important than a trade show. Next slide. And I don't know if I have shared this slide with you, but this is from 17 attendee floor engagement study, where we asked exhibitors what are their appetites for new models. And this was very interesting, because it also plays out in some of the other research that we are seeing. Some of them said that smaller, more personalized and curated shows. Also, the shows that are excluding the standard pipe and drape, connecting in exhibitors and attendees differently. We have talked about, and it has shown up in Seer research, about 365-day engagement, and our exhibitors have been this back to 2013 and you know, has up until the current year. So organizers are interested in providing a 365-day-a-year engagement. They're just really trying to figure out at this point, you know, what does that mean and how does it do it? What's the pricing model? You know, different things like that. So it's interesting that to me that this slide, which was from 2017, you know, we're seeing this today, that that change is being driven by a crisis. Next slide. So I wanted to let you know that in addition to this Freeman deck that you can pull off of the Freeman website, it is on there, that report is on there, that tomorrow Exhibitor Magazine, they conducted a survey, a consumer sentiment survey of managers and suppliers. They had 1,100 responses, which is a very, very robust response. And you can go to their website and register for this program that will be held tomorrow afternoon. Next slide. So then moving over to the perspective, which is perhaps the you know, the aspect that, you know, most of us are interested in, you know, and what is the impact. And I think that you may have seen the Seer research that came out from our economists that said that April through May, that the economic impact to the trade show industry was going to be upwards of $22 billion, at least through mid-May. You know, certainly that has changed. We are anticipating that the economic impact and forecast for through year end is going to come out at the end of May. He's working on that information now. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, what the numbers are at that time. Next slide. And many of you may have seen that President Trump released his three-phase plan for getting America back to work, where phase one, he specifically mentioned trade shows in that, and that schools remain closed and no you know, non-essential travel. And then it would go into phase two, and after 14 days that it would, you know, with declining cases, that it would go into phase three. And then trade shows could be operated under, you know, some different protocols. And you may also have seen in the news that the CDC came out with a, you know, that they had issued their own guidelines that evidently were twice as long as what President Trump's 3-day plan is. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, he's not following this plan. The states are all following their own plans. And so it's just really, it's really created a conundrum for everybody, I think, because it's creating a lot of confusion and a lot of misinformation because we don't know who to listen to or how to plan. Next slide. This is an interesting slide, and I know it's very difficult to see, and I'm actually going to have to pull it up on my iPad here so that I can see it. But this looks back at the Standard & Poor's 500 index, back to previous epidemics, you know, with measles, Zika, Ebola, and how the stock market performed against the Seer index. And the following year percent change there on the very far right against each of these epidemics. And you'll see that the swine flu did create a decline in the index, but all the other epidemics didn't really impact the index the year following. And I think that, you know, this is an important point, as I will talk a little bit more about some of the things that we're seeing and what we are anticipating. So can you go to the next slide, please? And I think, you know, one of the good things, and one of the things that Dr. Shaw has emphasized to me over and over again, and in a webinar that he did for Seer last month, I think it was, is that when you look at the economic downturn and the recession that we are in now, it's very unique. It's very different from the Great Depression, even though you are reading in the news that, you know, jobs have declined to the point of, you know, the Great Depression and then the recession. And you may recall also that from the recession that that it took us 10 years from that recession in 2008 to recover as an industry. And last year was the first year that we were back to where we were before the Great Recession. But it's very different now because the underlying fundamentals, if you look at the stock market, you know, with the exception of a couple of days where they stopped trading, has been fairly strong given the situation. And so looking back at, you know, the Great Depression and the recession of 2008, the underlying fundamentals as they are right now, it's very, very different. It's more of a supply shock with the stay-at-home orders and lockdown, you know, the low productivity of employees, you know, and of course the mortality. But there was the housing bubble burst in 2008 and the collapse in car sales and housing construction. So I think, you know, that's good news. And he is bullish that, you know, we're going to come out of this as of right now. And if you'll go to the next slide. He did conduct a scenario analysis about, you know, when we would resume and where GDP might come in at. So if you look at the best case scenario, you can forget about that because we're already past that. That's not going to happen. The base case, you know, reach a peak in April and then reopening the economy mostly from early May, and then trade shows would resume in August. I'm concerned about this because we have read about all of the cancellations that are occurring in August now. So I'm, you know, I would kind of set that aside now. And then the stress case that, you know, we reach a peak in mid-April, which I think we can, you know, cases are still going up in the United States. It's not necessarily that things have evened out or, you know, gone down, but reopening of the economy from early June, and then partially resuming in September, which is where I think that we probably will come in at. And if that's the case, then he is forecasting a 3.1% growth in GDP in 2021. But then there's the worst case scenario, which is I think all of us are very fearful of, is that, you know, what happens if that second phase comes through and in the fall, and if it does happen, then we won't see the exhibition industry resuming until mid next year. So that's the greatest fear and something that we'll be watching very closely, which is also one of the reasons why, going back to President Trump's 3-phase plan and, you know, against what the CDC had issued, you know, against what the individual states and local governments are doing, it just creates a, you know, a really unknown situation. Next slide. For those of you that heard me talk about this before, this looks at the Seer index back to 2005. The index actually does go back to 2001, but this slide just shows back to 2005 and where we were. And so after the recession in 2001, it took us until 2005 to recover. And then in 2006, there was a dip. Again, that, you know, and then you can see it going down in the recession of 2008, 2009. The red line is the Seer index. You may recall that's the total index. So it makes up those 4 metrics of number of exhibitors, attendance, net square feet of exhibit space sold, and the revenue, and against the GDP. And the exhibition industry has always lagged GDP. And I think this slide, you know, accurately depicts that shows that, you know, it generally lags, and it takes a while for the industry to catch up with GDP after some type of recession. Next slide. So what Dr. Shaw has told us is that he anticipates that given, you know, the scenarios that we know currently, that full recovery would happen in 8 quarters, so that around, you know, the fourth quarter of 2021, that the industry would recover and be back to where it was with GDP. So it's very important to watch GDP very closely, and that will be a good indicator for when the exhibition industry will return. You know, I pulled this off of the Wall Street Journal this morning, where gross domestic product change from fourth quarter to fourth quarter. And, you know, it kind of, I think, also depicts just that, you know, where we are now against where we, you know, looking back at, you know, 2008, 2010, versus where we were, you know, in 2000, 2001 with that slight recession, and going back to previous recessions. So, you know, just another visual of where we are right now. And the forecast, you know, for 2020 is a little bit lower. It's lower than what Dr. Shaw is at, but still, you know, pretty close to where he had said it would come in at. So, you know, keeping that in mind as well. So then, in terms of recovery, you know, what that might look like. Next slide. The good news is that there was a trade show in Korea. The slide on the left, very strict protocols with, you know, the spacing. You'll see the footprints on the floor, everybody wearing masks, temperature checks, some have face guards. But, you know, Korea came back. Korea, I think they've only had something like 300 deaths. They had gotten the pandemic under control. You may have also seen that the Hunan Auto Show in Hunan, China was held. I believe it was last week, with, I think it was 60,000 attendees. Very strict protocols that were put in place. You know, you may have read in China that you know, because of their lack of privacy laws, that the government, you know, can certify people in terms of, you know, them being healthy. And there's actually an app that could be tracked, you know, what their health status is. And this was just a domestic show. There are no international buyers. China has not opened up for international buyers. And in fact, when you land in China, I had an early morning call with one of my colleagues in China who landed there last week, and he's in the seventh day of his quarantine at a hotel that is specific for quarantining those individuals who are entering the country for 14 days. He's not allowed to even be in the hallway of that hotel. They deliver 3 meals a day to him outside the door. And he says he knows what it feels like to be a prisoner now, because that's what he looks forward to now, are his meals. So I think, you know, this is you know, it's an indication. I think it provides hope for us. You know, I also saw on the news this morning that the Shanghai government has opened up for trade shows. I just think there's going to be a lot of very strict guidelines, and probably no international buyers for a period of time. Next slide. So just to give you an idea of, you know, what is occurring, you know, one of the things that I really like about this industry, that just makes me feel so honored to be in it, is that in times of crisis, we really come together. And the International Association of Venue Managers has been working with the Global Biorisk Advisory Council to create a GBAC certification that will certify individuals and venues as being GBAC certified, having met certain protocols that are established by GBAC. And as a result of that, in our work, and these are all of the organizations that are working together on this initiative. United Services, Rick Simon was the one that actually brought the GBAC concept to the industry. Working also very closely with, you know, IAEE and ESCA and CISO and Meetings Mean Business Coalition, exhibit designers or experiential designers and producers association. Also, I did not put on their EACA, that just happened yesterday, where EACA and EDPA, all of us are creating our own guidelines. So the venues are creating their own, organizers are creating our own, contractors are creating their own. And then what we're going to do is we're going to compare all of these different guidelines to make sure that there's no conflicting information. I know that ESCA is going to have a draft of their guidelines available this week. IAEE and working very closely together with CISO, Society of Independent Show Organizers. Also, we will be releasing our guidelines around June 2nd or June 3rd that will have been reviewed by the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. Also including information in there from EDPA and EACA so that there will be some good guidance in there for you as well. So, you know, lots of really great collaboration. I just say I'm Zooming all day long, going from call to call and trying to get this work done because we realize that it is just of paramount importance that we all get on the same page and we're all moving in the same direction and understanding what each vertical of our industry is doing and how we can best support one another. Next slide. This is just a little bit about GBAC. It is a very global organization, so they're taking information from not just what's occurring here in the United States, but you know, almost every continent. And really looking at, you know, what needs to be done to keep people safe. And, you know, back to that Freeman slide that showed that, you know, when there's a COVID vaccine or when there's a treatment, but also people are wanting to know, they want to have a better understanding of what is being done to make sure that the venues and the shows are safe to return to. Next slide. We are also working very closely with U.S. travel on certain priorities, legislative priorities, putting out call to actions when necessary to contact our congressional representatives. You know, you probably saw the Paycheck Protection Program, and many of you have probably have taken advantage of it, and looking at making the ask of increasing the maximum loan amounts and flexibility and extending that coverage through 2020, and incentivize a safe restart to the economy, making sure that there are enough PPE and sterilization of facilities. One of the things that we are doing is, as these guidelines are completed, we are sending them to U.S. Travel, who has the relationship with the White House, to make sure that they have all the guidelines, that they understand that our industry is taking ownership of making sure that it is safe to attend an event, so that the government doesn't come in and give us protocols for how they want us to do our events. And then supporting community-based economic recovery, providing $10 billion in economic development administration grants for destination marketing organizations who have been absolutely decimated by the crisis. Also more relief for small businesses to promote healthy travel practices. Next slide. Also protecting businesses that protect public health. So we're looking, this is one issue that, you know, we're all very interested in and hoping we'll be able to get past, you know, providing that safe harbor from liability for businesses that follow the proper health and safety guidelines, which is why the whole GBAC certification is very, very important, because if we're able to say that we're all following these GBAC guidelines, then hopefully we will be able to get relief and make sure that we have safe harbor from liability. And then also, you know, the testing and support for travel and entertainment sites, as well as significant funding for implementation. Next slide. but it doesn't go far enough for the trade show industry. Go Live Together initiative, which you may have seen, that was started by Freeman, but it is really truly it's a global initiative. It's a industry-wide initiative. It's not a Freeman initiative. They just were the ones that started it because they have the depth and they had the you know, the fire in the belly to get this going. So you'll probably see that CEIR is supporting the Go Live Together campaign with a $250,000 contribution to hire the industry's own lobbyist outside of the U.S. travel, because U.S. travel primarily advocates on behalf of airlines and hotels and restaurants and amusement parks and things like that, but they're not focusing on business events. So this initiative is focusing on business events. And so looking at business tax credits for face-to-face sales and marketing activities, which I think, you know, participation in trade shows and events, getting the exhibitors back to trade shows, and then also the community development block grants, additional funding to provide convention centers and conference centers meetings, and to upgrade their infrastructure to make sure that they can meet the new safety guidelines that are required either by the government or, you know, what is being proposed, advised by the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. So I think you will be seeing a lot more about this. There is also conversation about tax credits in the future as it relates to the trade show industry, also rolling back and being able to, for tax deductions for entertainment at trade shows. So everything that we can possibly do to get people back to trade shows. So this is just a couple of the initiatives that go live together, and you will be seeing probably in the next week or so more associations coming in and supporting this initiative to hire a Washington, D.C. lobbyist firm that has direct relationships with Pelosi and Schumer and McConnell and all of the rest of them, because it's not going to, you know, we've got to advocate for ourselves. Next slide. So this is where all of you can come into play. We are, on the IAE side, they manage the Exhibitions Mean Business campaign and Exhibitions Day on June 3rd. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to be in Washington, D.C. meeting with our congressional representatives, but we are holding a virtual Exhibitions Day, and you can go to the IAE website and sign up for it. It will teach you all about advocacy, walk you through how to contact your congressional representatives. In all likelihood, based on what we have been told by both the Go Live Together initiative as well as by U.S. Travel, is that this next care package is not going to be voted on until at least the week of June 2nd. So this is an ideal time for you to join this virtual event and actually be able to really push out some really good, strong messaging on the need for relief for our industry. Next slide. So then I'm going to stop now and turn it back over to Antonia and say, you know, given, you know, what the organizers and brands are doing to adapting, what are all of you doing to adapt to this new environment that we're in, and you know, how can we all come together? How can we support you and you support us? And so back to you, Antonia.
Awesome. Thanks for all those insights and information. I already see a couple of people posting in the chat, so I know that we have some thoughts. I'm going to give it over to Steve to moderate our conversation. I know we have a bunch of people on the call right now, so if you can just raise your hand by clicking at the bottom of your screen. It is under, let's see.
It's participants, if they click under participants.
Okay, yeah, so you can click on participants and then raise hand if you have something to say, or send it in the chat, Steve.
Okay, so the first question we have is from Christine. did you mean to do that, Christine? You look like you raised your hand and then you stopped it. Was that a mistake? Okay. Okay, Ross, what's your question?
No, I was just curious in when you guys are working on these with the other group, trying to come up with a plan for how to approach the shows and everything. Is one of the things being considered about like maybe how we do things in the booth, about like things we need to build into the booth, like do reception counters need to have face shields now or things like that? Any type of thought?
Yeah, so yes, that is all being considered. It will most likely be in IAE's guidelines, but I haven't seen the other groups. I've seen the IABM GBAC guidelines, which are very comprehensive. But all of that information will be included, and it will just be guidelines, but it will be reviewed by GBAC, and and perhaps giving us alternative language that we might want to include in the guidelines. But yes, all of that, everything from aisle to food and beverage to spacing of exhibit booths. There's been talk about one-way aisles. So all of that will be included in the guidelines.
Okay, so the next question, Scott, you have a question?
Greetings. Corporate Effects Trade Show Magic Group here. We've been working quite a bit on what we are going to do as far as live presentations go, and theater style with socially spaced seats is really a big conversation here in our office. I'd be interested in working with any of the designers out there. If you'd like to chat with us, we'd love to kind of talk a little bit more off this line about that very specific thing, because it's going to help us, in the future here. And I think that we might have some insight for you as far as how you're designing those spaces. So I'll put my email in the chat here, and if you're interested in that, please let me know.
Yeah, one of the things I can tell you that all room is set for a general session for 1,000 people. It will now most likely be set for 500 people. To maintain that social distancing, although we don't like using that word anymore, social distancing. Yeah. We're social. It's physical.
Yeah, in the exhibit up to this point, we've been talking about pulling the bigger crowds to your booth. Obviously, that's not going to be our sales point now. It's the education and the traffic flow that we're talking about. So we have some drawings that we've been working on traffic flow that we'd like to share with our customers. But again, when it comes down to the designers, boy, I need your help, and I think I can help you too. So let's
Scott,
yeah.
Scott, this is Doug Young. Post your phone number and I'll give you a call.
All right, Doug, thank you.
And I can tell you, I saw Chris Griffin I saw his face somewhere, but Chris is working with EDPA on, the EDPA guidelines. And so I'm sure that, he would love to talk to you as well. Just saying, Chris.
Are you there, Chris?
I am here, and thank you for allowing me to sit in. Cathy and I work together on a lot of the advocacy stuff. So first of all, thank you for your presentation. I can tell you she has delivered the latest and greatest. And yes, I'm the chairman of the industry advocacy for EDPA. So I'm the point person for EDPA for Exhibitionist Day. Here's the great news. Even though we're not able to go and meet face to face, I spoke to Nicole at IAE 30 minutes ago. The best turnout, correct me if I'm wrong, Cathy, we've ever had in person at Exhibition Day. It's about 125 people that came and lobbied and connected with our congressional representatives. As of today, we have 427 people confirmed signed up for our virtual Exhibition Day. And it's been, particularly in the last several days, a really big influx of EDPA. So if you have not signed up for that event, which is going to be on June 3rd, definitely you go to exhibitionsmeanbusiness.com. And Antonio, and you don't have to raise your hand on this one, Antonio, because you're the chairperson, right, of the call. I always tease Antonio because she's always so polite. She raises her hand to, but maybe we can put that in exhibitionsmeanbusiness.com. Click on Exhibitions Day. simple information, and IAE will keep you informed. But this is going to be a really important event. I think it starts 8:15 West Coast time in the morning. We'll have an hour and a half or so where we break into Zoom rooms like this, and there'll be a lot of engagement where we have an opportunity with each room. We'll have a host to ask questions. And we're literally, you know, the biggest question I know Cathy I get is, how do I get more involved? What can I do to be helping? I think we're all uber aware of this right now. And so we're going to learn how to real time, and it's really easy. Send a tweet to your congressional representative or your state senator. How do we send a text? There are apps that can do that. But when we speak as one voice, and Cathy spoke beautifully to it, everybody's got their hand out for help right now. I mean, you guys see the data that I do on the news. There's 36 million other Americans that are out of work right now. And it's because companies are running out of cash, right? So they're having to furlough and lay people off. So how do we turn this thing around? And so, you know, the U.S. Travel Association, and we have a great relationship. EDPA and EACA and we're sort of surfing in IAEE's wake. They've been very gracious about bringing us in and expanding that group, and then we're all sort of surfing in the wake of the U.S. Travel Association, which, by the way, it's the largest lobbying group in the United States. We have the biggest voice speaking on our behalf, and they're doing a great job for it. But it's one of the reasons, if your company has received any federal or SBA loans, there's a bunch of people plowing the road to make sure we get a look and we get our shot in line. And there's a lot of people that aren't getting that. So for me, advocacy is taking on a whole new meaning this year. What can each one of us do? If you have not registered at exhibitionsmeanbusiness.com yet, definitely do that, because when we show up in big numbers, like it's looking like we are, not only do we look great to our partners at IAEE, we all look great to U.S. Travel, and they want to continue to speak up on our behalf for our issues. And this is not going to be over in the near term, guys. This is going to be going on for a while. So anyway, it's, you know, the hope is we're going to hear from some mayors. I did learn that unfortunately congressional representatives are not doing live Zoom engagements, so we won't have that opportunity. I wonder why that is, by the way. But they may record something. There may be some conference calls that are recorded. They may call in. So they're working on that right now. I would love to give you a more detailed of what the day's agendas specifically will look like. But if you guys are following the news, right, it is so very, very fluid right now. Information that we all craved and thought was, you know, most important thing 3 weeks ago is completely out of date now, right? So, you know, Cathy told you a little bit about what U.S. Travel's next round of asks is going to be on our behalf. In 3 weeks, I'm not sure, you know, some of it may already be a House resolution, and some of it might be negotiated into a different form. So through our chapters, we're going to try and maybe set up a chapter meeting timed to, you know, 2 or 3 days before the event. So maybe we can give you a little better sneak peek of what the actual agenda is going to look like, so we can all be prepared. But I think, man, showing up is going to be the most important thing for us. That's what we can do right now. And they'll also teach us a few things we can do after continuing. So it's good stuff.
Great. Thanks, Chris. We've got some other questions here. PFI displays. You had a question? You need to turn your mic on. Okay.
Thanks, Chris. Great point. I guess in light of what he's saying, and even the worst case scenario that was shared about, you know, possibly it was April to June next year. You know, number one, are you guys forecasting, you know, how many exhibition related companies are going to make it through this? And number two, you know, what are some of your all ideas? How are you guys looking to pivot in the meantime? You know, I know immediately, you know, a lot of us, I'm sure, were looking at room dividers and, you know, temporary hospital setups and the like. Since then, we've been here in Ohio pivoting towards, you know, how do we help restaurants reopen, because our governor allowed that. And the problem is, even like solutions that are a couple $100s are too expensive for them. We have restaurants putting up vinyl shower curtains to divide their dining rooms, which is insane to me. But so number one is what are you guys forecasting the worst case scenario for our industry? But then number two, anybody else have any ideas of what else they're trying to do as we wait for exhibits to open up?
You know, I'll just chime in on the point you made about the restaurants and kind of their homemade. How do we all feel about, you know, do-it-yourself exhibitors when we see the, you know, how that looks on the show floor? I think the great equalizer on some of that will be what Cathy talked about with this GBAC certified, the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. This is not a fad. This is going to be a game changer that will be with us for years, maybe forever. And the only analogy I can give you is those of us on the call that are old enough to remember what it was like flying through airports before the TSA pre-check apparatus, right? Before we got searched and frisked and we had the folks in the blue uniforms. Now it's just part of our DNA. I think when you look at the enhancements, the biohazard enhancements to the standard sanitation and cleaning rules, which are, they're going to be not just at our convention centers and at the airports and on the airlines, they're going to be for restaurants. They're going to be for stores where there's gathering. So my point is the restaurant that's hanging the shower curtain, at some point a GBAC person or official is going to walk in, or their competitor restaurants will do it correctly. And people, you know, the end of the day, this is going to be, what's it going to take for people to feel safe? Do you feel safe walking in and eating in that restaurant if COVID-19 is still in our airspace, right? And you're separated by, you know, your aunt's shower curtain? Probably not. The other question that you'd asked about, you know, we're all sort of thinking about what's the other lane we can move into. You know, I look at all of us and you know, you guys, I know half you on this call. It's so great to see. I mean, I'm, you know, PFI displays, man. I haven't seen you. It's great to see you guys. Derek Arnold, are you kidding me? Rob Cohen, I'd be fine if I just don't see you at all for a while. But no, I think we're all, we're in our terrible twos. First, it was temporary medical structures, and we all ran to that. Then it was sneeze guards, you know, in the banks and the supermarkets, and those of us that had acrylic sources were doing that. Then we moved to PPE production with masks and gowns, and God bless you, man, if you're making money that way. My personal plan B involves two new sales phrases. One is, would you like a fresh cocktail napkin with that drink, sir? And pizza, 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 right? So, but we're all looking for what is the lane we're going to be able to find additional revenue in. So, you know, that's a fact. We watched our shoppers go from toilet paper hoarding to cleaning supply hoarding to meat hoarding, and I feel like we've moved around, you know, trying to find the immediate thing to keep our 100,000 square foot shops and our people working. And I hate saying this, guys. I think we're just going to live in a changed world for a while. I don't think this is going to be an uneven recovery. It's going to seem unfair to those of us that are part of the large gathering event industry. Cathy was spot on when, you know, she talked about the separation between an exhibition, you know, and a rock concert, right? Or a football game. There is a difference. And that's the good news for us. I think we're going to come back quicker because our audience, right, is used to taking some direction about behavior. They sign up at the website we tell them to sign up. They travel and stay at the hotels we recommend with the event. They register the way we tell them to register. They go to the exhibit hall during the hours we tell them to be there. They go down these other wings to the meeting rooms for the content we provide. If we tell them we need them to behave a certain way and do some new things, I think our group will be better willing to listen and adjust than the 50,000 people walking in Tampa Stadium for the U2 concert. I mean, it's just not going to happen as well there. So you should separate us. And hopefully the governor of Illinois, particularly with IMTS or anybody else, is going to recognize that we're not going to be the last guys you allow to open. We want to be ahead of that. So, but in the meantime, it's going to be our business it's you know, when we get back to normal, I don't think normal's ever going to be what it was before. It doesn't mean it won't be profitable, but we're gonna have to reinvent the future. So that's
well, I would just, you know, I will just say this, that if the governor of Illinois does not separate trade shows out of mass gatherings, then, you know, there are plenty other convention centers for IMTS to go to. And, you know, that's a lot of pressure, I think, you know, when they start losing all those shows out of McCormick Place and other, you know, cities in Illinois. So that it, you know, as much as this is also very devastating to all of us, you know, to me, it's fascinating to watch if it wasn't just messing up people's lives so much, but it is interesting to watch all this and positioning.
Yeah. Great. So Rob Cohen, it looks like you had a question.
Yeah, just to stop the Chris Griffin comedy show, I'm going to direct this towards Cathy. With so many associations coming up with their own guidelines, the concern that I have, and I'd love to hear your comments and insight on, are guidelines effectiveness when you have that many sets of guidelines out there running in parallel with states driving their own decisions and the constitutional challenges that we're now seeing to the state's decisions.
Well, I think that, you know, with the associations, are you talking about them coming up with their own guidelines for their shows? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I think this whole GBAC thing is going to be a game changer because you've got science behind the guidelines. And to me, that is what is going to provide the protection from liability. It's not just the association and some committee getting together and creating guidelines. It's this GBAC-backed guidelines, I think, that are, you know, that are going to be important. Which is one of the reasons why we have, you know, we've taken our time, you know, rather than, you know, pushing out very quickly different guidelines, which, you know, some associations had to do because they had some events coming up. But, you know, we as an association took the stance that we needed to take our time, make sure that, you know, we're doing this right and we're being very deliberative in what it is that we're doing. And these guidelines will change. They're going to be fluid. It's not going to, they're not going to remain the same. And what is put out initially, you know, we'll have to keep putting updates to them as we learn more because, you know, we don't know a lot about the virus. So I think that they will be fluid, but they'll always, you know, we'll always make sure that they're checked by, you know, medical professionals and, you know, providing guidance to us.
Does that answer your question, Rob?
I had muted myself. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I just think it's important for us all to think about that, and that guidelines are great, but we've got a federal government that doesn't want to institute standardized policy. That's not a political statement. It's just an observation. We have various states affected in different ways implementing various things. And now we're seeing an uprising of constitutional challenges against state decisions. And pardon the use of this word, who's going to trump who and win what? And without protection from liability, I have to go back to that as an attorney by training who despises attorneys. Then we're going to have a lot of concern out there as to where we can go and what we can do.
Totally agree with you. I think the whole liability issue is one of the most important ones for us. It's critically important.
Okay, Matthew, you had your hand up, then it went down. Did you get your question answered?
Well, I heard everyone talk about IMTS. Did everyone, and my sound has been cutting in and out, so I don't know. Did you guys not hear that IMTS postponed this morning?
No.
No.
Yeah, they postponed to 2021. It was, I was on a Zoom call at 9 o'clock this morning, and that was the first thing that someone said. So
wow.
sorry, don't want to be the.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I heard, and it came from a reliable source, so I have no reason to believe that it's not true. So sorry if I give misinformation, though.
Ross, you had another question, right?
Yeah.
Did you have another question?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So, Cathy, I was just wondering, and I apologize if you might have covered this in the presentation. It was a lot to absorb. Are we doing anything to keep track of like the actual shows that aren't going to make it through this themselves? Like they can't handle, like I heard South by Southwest will have trouble coming back because of the financial hit they took. I mean, has there been any studies on that? Thank you.
There have not been any studies on that. I think that, you know, we'll wait a little bit, and maybe that's something that we put into this next survey that we put out next month. You know, I am very concerned, especially, well, not just the association shows, but, you know, right now, associations, 501c6 organizations, which is what IAEE is, we're not covered under the payroll protection program. And so we have no, I mean, we're very fortunate. We haven't laid off any staff, have taken pay cuts. Seer laid off a staff person, but, you know, there are many associations, you know, that trade show is 80%, 60 to 80% of their annual revenue. And if something happens, you know, that they're not able to hold that show, then, you know, if they don't have a sufficient amount of reserves, they're not going to make it. But so I am very concerned, and not just associations. I mean, even, you know, the smaller for-profit organizers, you know, Informa, you know, that I heard that the first quarter of the year, they'd lost over $500 million. So it's a huge concern for me. And it's big.
Okay, do we have any other questions? I don't see any other hands up. Does anyone else would like to ask Cathy or anything? Or basically, if there's no other questions, just, oh, Naveen, I can see you put your hand up there. What was your question?
Hi, Cathy. I'm not sure if this was covered because
Sorry.
Can you hear me, Cathy?
I can hear you, but I'm going to take my video. I'm going to go off video because my connection's unstable. So I'm just going to go off video.
Thank you. My question is, I read a survey where it said about approximately 20% of the SMB businesses are going to be severely affected and probably will not be able to make it through. I'm not sure how valid that is, but because a lot of businesses in our industry fall under that, has there been any projection or survey of how many of our businesses in our industry could potentially be affected?
Not to my knowledge. You know, it might be interesting. I don't know if you saw my slide about the Exhibitor Magazine webinar tomorrow and the study that they did with the responses, that they may have some of that information, but I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for an amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're getting close to, we're actually running over here, but if anyone else has any other questions, like general questions that's the people maybe to answer, someone like Chris or someone like that, this last call. If not, we'll wrap it up. One of the things we want to try and do is we want to try and do one of these every month for the next few months during these times with different speakers. So anyone's welcome to join. We can have up to 100 people. And I think today we had 74 people signed up. So it's all good conversations, and it's great to hear perspectives from other chapters and different parts of the US. So anything else?
Yeah, we also recorded the session, and we're going to send out the recording as well as the slides from Cathy. So you can pass it along as well.
Okay, looks like Liam has a question.
Yeah, Liam with IPME, formerly with Exhibitor. Some of you may know me when I worked with them. I just thought it was interesting to comment that I was talking to some of my insiders at Exhibitor. And one of the things that I think is really interesting from the show management side is the real determination that's happening with shows is the facilities, right? The facilities are under a tremendous amount of pressure that's making the decision for the show to decide on what they're going to do. Because when I was talking to this insider at Exhibitor, they were essentially like, look, we know we're looking at wider aisles, and we're looking at the meetings rooms going from 100 capacity to 50% capacity. And, there were all these changes, but at the end of the day, we don't even know if they're going to be allowed to put on a show in August when we plan to. So there's so many people, we're all being held hostage on so many different levels to this thing that changes daily. And I just thought that was worth mentioning, that regardless of regulations, you have the facilities that are answering and all of these different entities that have to deal with all this different stuff. So I thought that was interesting and worth commenting on.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And let's be honest. Any increased expenses, as a result of this, we know who pays for that, right? It's the exhibitor. And so, I'm concerned about that as well. And I'm concerned about, like I said, there being a smaller number in attendance, and, organizers will do some type of hybrid type of event. We're living in very uncertain times, and I hate leaving a webinar without having something positive to say, but I really do think, the industry is resilient. We've seen that over and over again from previous, recessions. And Seer's economist is, he's bullish on it, and he's been very accurate for the most part over the years that we've had him providing us with the forecast. So, if I can leave you with anything that's positive, I leave you with Dr. Shaw's forecast that, we are going to come back. It's going to look different. We're going to have to do things differently, but the industry will be back.
Great. Thank you, Cathy. Antonia, do you want to finish things up here?
Yeah, well, thank you so much to Cathy for presenting and giving us all those insights. I think we all have a lot to think about. I will add everyone to our email list who signed up because you shared your emails. If you'd not like to be on our email list, just let us know, email us back. And as Steve said, we're going to be having another session like this. And we've been talking with who we think our host will be. So just look out in your email for that invite. I think that these sessions are really good to, you get bogged down in the day-to-day of your work, and it's really good to get connected with people from around the country who are in the industry to gain insight. And Cathy did a great job of bringing us together. So thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you at the next presentation.